For a long time, I thought respect belonged to the people who spoke the most, the ones who always had an answer, the ones who filled every silence, the ones who made sure they were noticed. But the more I paid attention, the more something didn't add up. The people everyone deferred to were not the loudest in the room. They were the ones who spoke last. They listened more than they talked. They didn't rush to react. And somehow, without raising their voice or explaining themselves, they shaped the room. That contrast stayed with me. Because respect doesn't disappear or appear by accident. It follows signals. And silence, when it's grounded, sends one of the strongest signals the human brain knows how to read. In this video, I want to break down why silent people are often the most respected, not as a personality trait, but as a deliberate behavioral pattern rooted in psychology. Silence isn't about being shy or withdrawn. It's about what you choose not to say and when. Once you understand what silence truly communicates, power, confidence, and self-control, you'll start seeing social dynamics very differently. And if you stay tuned until the end, you'll begin to notice how respect is formed, how authority is signaled without words, and why the quietest person in the room often holds the most influence. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Silence creates contrast. This was the first thing that stood out to me once I started watching people more carefully. Most conversations aren't exchanges, they're competitions. Everyone is trying to enter the space as quickly as possible, afraid that if they don't speak now, their moment will disappear. So, when someone doesn't rush in, it feels unusual. They don't interrupt, they don't jump in mid-thought, they wait. That waiting creates contrast. In a loud environment, restraint becomes noticeable, not because it demands attention, but because it refuses to compete for it. When that person finally speaks, the room is already listening, not out of obligation, but curiosity. The lesson here is that silence earns attention because it breaks the rhythm people expect, and broken patterns are hard to ignore. Chapter 2. Silence signals inner confidence. The next shift wasn't about others. It was internal. I noticed that people who stayed quiet weren't holding back out of fear. They were calm because they didn't feel rushed from the inside. They weren't scanning faces for approval. They weren't adjusting their words to land perfectly. They trusted themselves enough to let moments pass without filling them. That ease is what people read as confidence, not boldness, not dominance, just comfort. Silence is respected when it comes from someone who feels complete without needing to perform. If this perspective on silence is shifting how you see social dynamics, this channel explores psychology, presence, and quiet confidence in depth. So, if you want to keep learning how respect is built beneath the surface, make sure to subscribe before you forget. Chapter 3. How silence filters what really matters. Another difference became obvious over time. Quiet people don't speak out of habit. They speak out of choice. Because they aren't constantly talking, they have time to think. And that thinking shows. Their words are usually simple, direct, and relevant. Not because they're trying to sound wise, but because they've already sorted their thoughts internally. People begin to associate that voice with clarity. The lesson here is that when you only speak after you've processed, your words naturally carry more weight. Chapter 4. When silence becomes a boundary. The final distinction was the most important. Silent people don't argue endlessly. They don't chase understanding. They don't explain themselves to exhaustion. When something crosses a line, they don't always respond with words. They respond with distance. They change how available they are, how engaged they remain, where they place their energy. That quiet withdrawal does more than confrontation ever could. Silence becomes powerful when it's backed by action, not when it's used to disappear. The core understanding. Silent people are often respected not because they say nothing, but because everything they do say is intentional. Their behavior signals control, clarity, and inner stability. If there's one thing to take from this, it's this. You don't need to be louder to be respected. You need to be clearer. And if you want to continue learning how psychology, silence, and presence shape how others treat you, subscribe and start your transformation process right now. More lessons like this are coming. Sometimes the strongest signal you can send is quiet.